Alright, in this video we are going to create a frequency table and then create some histograms and answer questions about those. So first thing, when you are given a set of data and you are creating what we call a frequency table, now you can do this in a couple different ways. Some people just like to say, okay, from 50 to 59, and they like to go through and count how many that is. So that would be 2. Well, sometimes I feel like I miss numbers if I do it that way. So sometimes I like to go through and do kind of a tally. So I kind of, 58 goes here, 79 goes here, and I kind of cross them off as I do them so that I don't miss any of them. So it's really up to you, and then when I'm done I total them up, but it's up to you. Either way, if you look at these data sets and you total them up, you have 2 in this spot, 2, 2, 6, 6, 4, and there are 20 of them total. So that's how we get this column, is by just counting how many are in that data spot. Okay, now the last column, which is known as the proportion of students, you can write that two ways. One, you can write as a fraction, 2 over 20, because there's 2 in this spot, that's the numerator, and here's the denominator. So the portion goes on top, and total goes on the bottom. Now we can also write that as a decimal, and 2 over 20 is 0.1. So I'm going to write each of these as a decimal. 6 would give us 0.3, so both of those are 0.3. 4 is 0.2, and then of course 20 out of 20 gives us a total of 1, and that makes sense because that's our total. Alright, so when we go to the histogram of the frequency, so this first piece is frequencies. So our column on this side will be known as frequencies, and on the bottom we want to put our age groups. So this is 50 to 59, this is 60 to 69, and you should write them all. I can't write that small with my finger on here, so I just wrote the lower end. And we're going to start at frequencies. So the first line is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we make our bars. So remember, there were 2 in this first spot, so here's 2. The next bar, there were 2, and they should touch. For the 70 range, there were 6, so this one goes up to 6. The next one is also 6, and then it comes down to 4. And this would be our histogram. Now for the proportions, we can do the same thing, proportions on the side, and we've got our labels. You want to make sure you use your numbers, and if we'll go 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, you'll see that it should look pretty much the same, right? We got 0.1, we're at 0.1, goes to 0.3, 0.3, and then 0.2. So because I went by ones, the graph is a little bit shorter, but it shows the same data. Alright, so using that data to answer some questions. Number 1, what proportion of the students passed the test with at least a D? Now, at least a D, that means we're looking at 60 or greater. Okay, so when we go back to our tables here, and we might even do it from this part, 60 or greater, so that's this stuff. So we're talking about 2 plus 6 plus 6 plus 4. All right, we're talking about 18 people. So what proportion? Well, 18 is the number, so the proportion would be 18 out of 20, which is 0.9. So make sure you're reading the question. This one says proportion. Number 2 says how many. So we actually just want a number for number 2 of how many earn between 70 and 90. Well, here's 70, here's 90 is the beginning. So we're just looking at these two boxes. So 6 plus 6 gives me 12 students scored between 70 and 90. So you can use either the frequency table or your histogram to answer questions about it. All right, let's do another example. You're given some temperatures from January, and we need to first create the frequency. So you might want to go ahead and hit pause and try to complete this problem on your own. Do your frequency table and a histogram of the frequencies, and then come back and see how we deal with them. Okay, so your frequencies. I have 4, then 2, 2, 6, for a total of 16. 14, I'm sorry, I looked at the wrong spot on my paper. Total of 14. The proportion in terms of decimals, I've got 0.29, 0.14, 0.14, and 0.43. When I total those up, I do end up with 1, which is good. Now when I'm making my histogram, remember again, I'm going to have frequency on the side, And then each one of these intervals goes from the bottom, so 17 to 21, 22 to 26, 27 to 31, and 32 to 36. And again, I can't write the whole thing on there because I have fat fingers. Okay, so I'm going by frequency, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I fill them in. From 17 to 21, recall, I had 4. So there's that bar. 22 to 26, I had 2. The next one, I believe I also had 2. And then my data jumps up to 6. And so there is, there's my table. And we really could have a total down here. This could be, temperatures, something like that. Now answering questions. How many days were freezing or above? Well, remember that freezing starts at 32. So that's just this part. So again, how many? That's just a number. It's 6. So what's that proportion? Well, 6 out of 14 gave us 0.43. So your proportion would be 0.43. What proportion of days was the temperature 31 or below? Well, you can do this one two different ways. Oops, wrong way. You could say, well, 31 and below are these 3, which we know 4 plus 2 plus 2 is 8. So you could just say it's 8 out of 14, which is 0.57. But I want to talk about kind of the other one. We knew over here that freezing, and remember freezing is 32 and above, was 6 out of 14. So if 32 and above is 6 out of 14, then 31 and below is everybody else. So that would be 8, because together, we call these complements. Together they make up the entire set. But you can just count just as easily to get that answer. Now, in number 6, it says, how many days were in the teens? Well, if you look at our table, we can't just use our table because this first spot here has 20 and 21, and those are not teens. So I got to go back to my data set and say, there's 19, there's 18. So I have 2 days in the teens, and when I go to the proportion of that, I take 2 out of 14 for a 0.14 is the proportion of days that were in my teens. So sometimes you might make a frequency table or even a histogram, and it's not going to show you everything you need. So still might have to go back and use your data set at times.